potential clients and even clients at the beginning, they're so afraid to go narrow and hyper focus on a niche. But how has choosing that niche with law firms and owning it, how has that helped your growth?
It's been amazing. So here's the deal. Some people think you just like flip a switch and you're now a specialist, right? And I think that's maybe not the best way to go. So what I did was identified a group of people that needed what I had. And by the way, so did 50 other industries, okay? But there was a point where you start building your name and building your reputation in a particular space like the law. And what happened was about 80 to 85% of my business over about 2 years was lawyers and law firms. And so you realize, okay, not only is there something here, but if I was gonna niche down and make a choice to focus in a group, why not do it? And so that was an important turn of events as a non-lawyer to move into a space where I could be, highly effective at helping people who have really no background or experience in the business side of law.
Welcome to the Turbo Branding Show, where we will help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. I'm your host, Sue Kirshner. Today, I'm welcoming Steve Fretzin to the show. Let's delve into today's episode and turbocharge your brand. First, thank you so much for being here, Steve. I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. I'm excited to be here and lots to talk about.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to talking about law firms and the challenges they face with branding and marketing as they grow. And Steve, you are the guru to talk about this topic. You're a legal business development coach. You help lawyers build the legal practice they've been dreaming about. But you're also the four-time author and host of Be That Lawyer podcast. So instead of me reading more about your bio, let's have some fun. And I'm going to ask you some questions to help get to your story and help us get to know you a little bit better. So
it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. So what are you an expert in? What's your superpower, Steve?
Oh, male model to start. And,
Excellent.
No.
Excellent.
But listen, I'm someone who has been in the sales world since I was 16 years old, selling shoes at a store called Kinney's, the Great American Shoe Store back in the,
I remember
in the
that.
80s. Yeah, I was alive in the 80s. And I kind of had an affinity for it and building relationships. And I ended up moving up the food chain of I didn't stay in shoe sales like Al Bundy from, what's that show called?
Married with Children.
Married with Children, yeah. But I ended up moving up the food chain. I ended up in the franchising space. And I just really was passionate about learning sales and honing sales. And the one thing that really drove me nuts was selling and convincing and the whole methodology of just jamming a round peg in a square hole. So I came up with a methodology called sales-free selling about 22 years ago of how do we effectively do sales without selling. And what I didn't realize at the time is that lawyers hate sales and they hate selling, and they never thought in a million years that they would have to go out and develop their own clients. So the two sort of mashed together back in 2008, 9, and I never looked back. So I just am really passionate about helping lawyers to grow their law practices.
Perfect. It's funny. So many people I meet, a lot of potential clients and even clients at the beginning, they're so afraid to go narrow and hyper focus on a niche. But how has choosing that niche with law firms and owning it, how has that helped your growth?
It's been amazing. So here's the deal. Some people think you just like flip a switch and you're now a specialist, right? And I think that's maybe not the best way to go. So what I did was identified a group of people that needed what I had. And by the way, so did 50 other industries, okay? But there was a point where you start building your name and building your reputation in a particular space like the law. And what happened was about 80 to 85% of my business over about 2 years was lawyers and law firms. And so you realize, okay, not only is there something here, but if I was going to niche down and make a choice to focus in a group, why not do it? And, when most of your business is there anyway. So I just had to turn away a few financial planners and some other groups that were coming to me and say, look, I'm really focused on attorneys now. And by the way, I didn't have to turn them away. I could have kept them on, but I just like the idea of I'd rather be a big player in a small space than a smaller player in a big space. And, here I was telling lawyers how they need to niche down, and I hadn't really taken my medicine yet. So that was an important turn of events as a non-lawyer to move into a space where I could be highly effective at helping people who have really no background or experience in the business side of law.
Right, right. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. And I am going to ask you about how you help with, telling your law firms to position or niche or, things like that. But So who is your ideal client? So when you talk about law firms, what size are we talking about? What growth stage are they in?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I really focus internationally on individual lawyers. So I used to work with law firms. I really don't anymore.
Okay.
However, I will work with managing partners who run law firms. And so I have coaching and training as one deliverable that I'm providing for most of the work I do over a year's time. And then I also run 4 peer advisory or mastermind groups for individual high performing rainmaking lawyers. That's where I get to work with a lot of the managing partners. So I am privy to information about what's going on, at the law firm level. And I'm very effective at helping, maneuver them around all of the, operations and marketing and technology. And I don't do all of that. So it's wonderful. I get to refer, wonderful people like you and others to do some of the things that I don't do. But I'm really observing a lot about what's going on with them, what are their challenges, and where they, where can they really lean in.
Okay. And does that also include, let's say, experienced lawyers who are leaving a firm, but they're going to, put their shingle out, and open their own practice?
Yeah, and in fact, most of the work that I do is with lawyers who are in transition. So a lawyer moving laterally to another firm wants to make sure it takes off the right way. Lawyers that are moving out on their own, maybe they've never been in a private practice. They're a general counsel that wants to start their own gig. And then lawyers who are looking to elevate to make equity partner. They need to build that $1 million book and they just don't know how to do it. They're just stuck, winging it and just trying whatever they can and sort of like flailing at it instead of having plans and processes and methodologies that are all proven out.
Right, right. Excellent. All right. So a couple more questions about you, and then we're going to jump right into law firms and some of the challenges they face in addition to what you've already talked about. But what gets you up in the morning?
Great question. Daylight for starters, knowing that there's coffee brewing, that would be a second.
Always good.
Yeah. Mainly though, that I love what I do. So I'm not getting results for myself so much as I'm getting results for my clients. And so helping them to, post on social media for the first time and then make it a habit, getting them to agree that following a system is better than winging it, and then watching the results roll in from those efforts, watching them come back and say, I've just had the best year I've ever had. Every year is my best year. I've got lawyers going back, 10 and 15 years. Every year is their best year, from 2 million to 2.5 to 3. And that's what gets me up every day. And I just love it. Like, I don't ever see myself fully retiring. I think there's going to be a point where I slow down at some point, but I just love what I do too much. And the relationships that I'm building, not only with folks like you and, strategically, but with the clients that I'll have those relationships forever, so it's just a blast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, you're an author, so I'm going to ask you this question. Is there a book that influenced you, a business book that influenced you? For me, I read all these branding books, but it was Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckworth that
Hmm.
really made a difference to me in terms of, oh, I love service firms. I love branding. I love the fact that you're trying to get people to trust you,
Yeah.
right? What book work did that for you? Kind of get you like, oh man, this is great.
This is the most boring book that you'll ever hear answered on the show, probably, but this book changed my life. So if you think about someone who's very entrepreneurial, a visionary, all over the place, right? So I've got stacks of business cards, stacks of folders. I've got, hundreds and hundreds of unopened emails. Just everything is sort of a whirlwind around me. The book Getting Things Done by David Allen,
Mm.
not the most fun book because what it's saying is, you're a disaster basically, and you need to have a system for how you manage and organize your time and manage and organize your life. And if you think about where I was and then where I am now, even a year after reading it, zero inbox for the last, really 17, 18 years. I have no
Wow.
paper. I have no paper. I use a Remarkable 2 pad. I've got zero paper. The only paper I have is this thing sitting on my desk. Oh, what's that?
Oh, what's
My,
that?
that's my new book.
Love
So
it.
this
Be
is
that
number,
lawyer.
yeah,
Love
this
it.
is number five, number five.
Okay.
So that's the paper I have. So it's like the idea that I'm highly organized not only demonstrates to the crazy lawyers that I work with that it's possible, but I actually work with them to train them and coach them on how to be as organized as I am. And boy, does that really make a difference in their lives when they start to realize, that it doesn't just have to be, a huge tidal wave coming at their faces, that there's ways to, to move forward and get more done in less time.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to look into that one. Yeah. So let's dig in to leverage your expertise on helping lawyers build the legal practice they've dreamed of, and especially focus in on the marketing and branding point of view. But in your opinion, do law firms even need to build a brand and market their services?
Oh boy, the way you asked that question was so filled with
So filled with people I've talked to in the
yeah,
past.
right. It's like, give me a break. Yeah, obviously, there's so many important ways and reasons why law firms and lawyers need to brand themselves. And the argument will be made by someone somewhere that we have too much business, or, we've got a website up and that's all we need. Okay, you've got so many different ways to unpackage that. So number one is, if you don't need more business today, that doesn't mean you're not going to need more business in the future. I mean, is it possible that we're going to go into a recession? Most of the experts say that we are. How are you preparing for that? And the idea that you're going to lean into branding and marketing and business development now to protect yourself in 6 months, no one's thinking that way, or very few people are thinking that way, and they absolutely should be right now. Spending more money on branding and marketing right now when you're, instead of holding tight on your budgets, is critical, I think, for people that are going to end up being ahead of the game in the future. Also, are you hiring? Are you branding to bring in great talent? No, we have a website up, and we're not looking to bring in a diverse talent base. We're just looking to just put something up so we have something up. These are the missteps that we're seeing happen all the time. And so whether it's trying to do lead gen, whether it's trying to brand yourself so that you're well thought of in the marketplace, or when people go to your website, they understand what you do and why you do it, and that you're the right decision, and they're going to click the button that says either I want to meet with you, or they just pick up a phone and call you because the website did its job of converting someone that was going to refer you to someone who actually does refer you.
Right, right. How much have you seen when a client calls into a law firm? Are they really shopping around? Number one. And then number two, if they are comparing, let's say you're looking for someone who's even going to just help you with estate planning, or coming up with your trusts and, all those kinds of things. Do you need to differentiate yourself from the competition, or do you just need to be authentic in the way that you serve people and get that personality out there?
Well, number one is, when someone is, intake, when someone is reaching out and you're not handling that by picking up the phone or having someone pick up the phone, whether that's a call service or someone that is running your phone system, that's the first step of not losing business. Because when I call anybody and I get a voicemail, the likelihood that I'm gonna move on to the next name, if I've gotten 3 names, it's 100%. I'm going to the next name. Whoever picks up is gonna win the business if they pick up and they handle the call well. And the people who don't return calls, well, forget them, right? They're out, and if they're out once, how many? They might be out 100 times a year, 100, 200 times a year. So that's number one. And then the second thing is, like, how are you managing that call? What are the steps? What's the intake process? Is there even a process? And how are you coming across authentic and caring and understanding and empathetic on that call? There's just, so many people are winging it, and that's not, for marketing and business development, winging it is the enemy of success and results.
Yeah.
So we need to think about, every successful law firm has internal processes and language that they're using to be successful. And the ones who don't, typically they're less successful for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned in your book, Sales-Free Selling, that selling anything in today's environment requires a lot more than simply having good product or service. How does that apply to law firms beyond that initial sales call? So, like, during the actual experience of working with a client?
I think they have to mirror each other. The experience they have when you're meeting them to walk them through a buying decision, and the way that they feel, and the empathy that is developed, and the trust and the believability that you're the right fit, that has to match the experience they're going to have. Mm-hmm. So we've all been sort of sold a bill of goods where we think we're getting something and then ends up being a disaster.
Right.
And you're looking for repeat business, you're looking for referrals, you're looking for something that's going to sustain you long term. That's going to be problematic. So I think lawyers that go in and aggressively pitch and talk and sell and convince, that's right off the bat leading someone down, I believe, a bad path
Hmm.
versus someone who's asking, listening, building that trust, and again, walking someone through a buying decision to make sure there's a mutual win-win, and then having a killer, high communication, high touch experience where expectations are set and met and there's no big, surprises at the end of, by the way, here's your big bill that you weren't even expecting, and all the things that can sabotage a long-term successful relationship. So I think they really have to match each other.
Yeah, I like that. And one of the things that I found when I've worked with a couple law firms in the past is this whole idea you mentioned about high communication. It's you absolutely have to communicate. And one of the biggest challenges I found with some of the clients I worked with was this idea of, I don't want to call it empathy, but it was this idea of the lawyer had a very hard time understanding the place that the client was in. And they're like, well, I don't need to tell them that. They should know that. No, no, they don't know that. You
Mm-hmm.
know that because you're an expert in it, but they don't. And that's where a lot of the disconnect came in was I found that, one or two lawyers I worked in the past, they had a very hard time taking off their lawyer hat and saying, what would a client want to know? Or do you think they need to hear from me every now and then about what's going on when there's huge time lapses between steps and things like that?
Yeah. So it's just critical to always have a next step. So I'm teaching this constantly. So I'm networking with somebody and I've got a connection for them. They've got a connection for me. All right, we make those connections and then we agree to meet in a month and network again. Or there's some reminder I put in my calendar to make sure that I'm following through with certain people. And so I'm never missing anything. And I think same thing with business development. If in working with a new prospective client, you finish the first meeting and they say, this looks great. I'll look it over. I'll review it. I'll think about it. And then there's like dead silence for 3 weeks. And the deal's basically done, dead. Like that's not likely to come back. Why wasn't there something set up to say, all right, so you need, a week to review this. Great. Let's get something in the calendar in a week to meet again, to review it, talk it through, answer questions, and just keep things moving forward. And don't let time to be the enemy of winning business because it typically is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. It's something that people just, again, if they're not as used to marketing or savvy in marketing, they seem to think it's only about the messaging or it's only about the website. But as you and I know, it's the customer experience that makes or break that brand. So they need to focus on that. So one of the things that you mentioned is you help maybe, a lawyer go off and start their own firm. Does naming come up ever as a question to you in terms of, a lot of firms, obviously, they take their, we're going to use our last name kind of a deal. Or, are there a lot more, is there a trend towards, well, let's not use our names, let's create an actual firm name so that it's not tied or dependent to me. What have you seen, or how do you counsel some of your clients on that?
I mean, so I'm not someone who's like a branding expert from a
Mhm.
standpoint of like coming up with great names. So even to be that lawyer, mantra, name, etc., I didn't create that myself. Like I'm inside the bottle. I can't read the label, right?
Yeah.
We can only see the label from the outside. So I'm actually pretty good and I enjoy the creative side of helping people with their taglines or their LinkedIn profiles and what they say and, above, under their name or whatever. And I've helped some people name their firms. I think there's a trend moving away from the 3, 4 name partners into something that's easier to remember and maybe something that stands for what you represent. So one of my friends is Leslie Cohn here in Chicago, and she has a firm, All Rise.
Hmm.
And it just hits home on so many levels. All Rise being, obviously a courtroom term. At the same time, it's like, hey, everyone rises with us. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there's just multiple meanings. So here's the good news. You have an idea about it, you know what you represent, you can go and plug all of that information into AI and
Mhm.
it'll give you 5, 6, 7 really interesting names. You can even say, and give me something that isn't currently trademarked or give me something that isn't currently online that would be an interesting name for me. And then of course you have to double check that and, GoDaddy that and make sure that it isn't taken. But that's such a great way to come up with something today that didn't exist. You have to hire someone for branding to come up with that kind of stuff. But I think, look, at the end of the day, you also want to consider bringing in a branding expert because ultimately a lot is riding on that name and you're going to be changing all of your content around it. And you want to make sure that it's something that you're prospective clients and your existing clients agree represents what you stand for, what you're great at doing, and what makes you authentically unique. And that's where I think, expertise comes in versus, just trying it off the cuff on ChatGPT. So I'm giving you both. But look, if you're a solo and you have no budget, like ChatGPT is the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And one of the things that I find interesting and building off of what you just said is, again, I was brought in for a law firm where it's when you start small, right? And it's just you, the brand is you. It's your personality. It's a personal brand. But as you start to grow and you start to add more people onto your firm, suddenly it's not you anymore, right? A client may come in and never get to meet the person whose name is on the
Yeah.
door,
Yeah.
right? They may be working with other people and all that. So I've worked a lot with clients in terms of like, how do we take the founder's personality and brand and infuse that into the organization, and sometimes it gets tricky because especially in partnership situations, which a lot of law firms are, how do you take the multiple, personalities of the different partners and infuse that into one particular, organizational brand? So I don't know if that's ever, anyone's ever asked about that in your peer groups or anything like that, but that was fascinating to me. I love working with that in terms of like taking all the disparate, cultural elements or personalities of the founders and creating this is what the organization is going to stand for and have as their core values, their brand, and their culture moving forward. So I don't know if you've ever had conversations about that, but
Yeah, we have. And I think, obviously it's easier if there's one person at the top that sort of represents the firm and they can make that decision with maybe some help. But if you've got three or four, founders, first of all, they all have to agree that getting their names off the door is okay and that it's going to benefit the long-term growth of the business, take the ego out of the room. And if that's the case, then it's a matter of, just having enough options to all say, hey, we need to vote on this. And, 3 out of 4 say yes to XYZ, that's going to be it. And the other person needs to just go along and be okay with it. And hopefully you get a bunch of really good ideas.
excellent. Yeah. All right. One of the other things I was going to ask you is just, what are some of the biggest challenges or even fears that lawyers have when it comes to marketing their practice? I mean, what scares them the most?
I think what scares them is just going out and wasting time. It's they're billable and there's money involved in wasted time. So, many of them have gone out to networking events. They've gone to conferences. They've tried speaking in front of groups. They've done all these things. It didn't produce. And so it's just like, well, then I'd rather just not do that and just keep billing hours. So they end up never building the book that they really should be building. That's one aspect of it. Another is obviously fear of rejection. Hearing no is not easy for anyone. And, if you understand that no is a good thing, and I'm happy to explain that, that changes the mindset of, terrified of no and, anything to not hear a no and all that. My take on it is if time is money, the best answer we can get is yes, let's proceed forward. And the second best answer we can get is no. But it's understanding why it's a no that I think is sometimes what they don't get. They don't hear no, they get, I'll think about it, and then they just get ghosted, which is a no, right? It's just a way around it. It's what we do in this country. Yeah. More interestingly, in sales-free selling, what we are doing by walking a buyer through a buying decision is working to try to get to the truth. The truth is this prospective client doesn't have any money. The truth is that I thought I was dealing with the decision maker, and in fact, I'm not. There's someone else involved that's going to make this decision. Or it could just be that there's no urgency to move forward, in which case, they're just kicking tires or whatever. As long as I know why they're not proceeding forward or know why it's a fit or not a fit, I'm usually great with a no. I appreciate a strong no. This is why I can't move forward. I've got this going on in my life. It's going to take me 3 months. And then we'll talk again. And we're not. If they don't sign up with me, I can tell you, like from experience, 20 plus years, people either lose weight or they don't lose weight. They either, exercise, they don't, and you can dabble in whatever. But the idea is people need to make decisions today, not in, hey, I'm going to drop 10 pounds in 6 months. Is that going to happen really? What's different in 6 months? Yeah, put on more weight. So ultimately, that's what I'm seeing is, just a fear of change and making decisions and pushing chips into something that is it's hard. I mean, developing a book of business is hard. Now, can it be made easier with plans and methods and systems and language? Yeah, of course. That's why I'm in business. But ultimately, the idea of it is I have all this work to do. On top of that, I have a family, right, that I'm dealing with and friends and whatever. And now on top of that, you're telling me I need a whole other job of marketing and branding and business development on top. It's overwhelming.
Hmm. So what can I ask? What kind of process could someone who's a solo, they have their own, own practice, they don't have a big staff or at all. What can they do? What process can they put in place so that, like you said, it's effective for them, but it also protects their time?
Yeah. So again, that's where, my first book is Sales Free Selling. That's a quick and easy read and essentially lays down, how do we go about developing a plan? How do we go about, getting in front of new prospective clients? And then how do we walk them through a buying decision to get to a yes or no efficiently, right? And without pitching, selling, or convincing. So that is a big part of my overall methodology. Obviously, whether it's me or someone else, hire a coach, hire someone that can shortcut and take years off of your life experimenting and trying it on your own. And I think, the other thing I'll say, and I say this quite often, look, you became a lawyer and you know a lot about lawyering. You now understand that business development, marketing, branding are a big part of how you're going to create independence, control, and freedom in your career. Yet you haven't taken the same mental move towards becoming a student of the game of marketing and business development the way you did to go to law school and learn the law and practice the law. And I think for people that are really serious about making sure they're protected in the future with their own clients and their own book of business, you need to become a student of the game of business development. So time management, getting things done, sales free selling, my new book, 101 top rainmaker secrets to growing a successful law practice. It's not my ideas. It's what are the best ideas from 101 top rainmakers. They're telling you, don't screw up like I screwed up. Do this instead. Here are the secrets. And so it's like anything you can do, podcasts, videos, reading are going to help you accelerate the ability to grow business and be secure.
Yeah, it is. It's very lonely, as you know, that when it's just yourself, trying to make these decisions and things like that. I think another interesting thing, and I don't know if you talk about it with your peers or your clients, is find yourself an advisory board, right? Whether it's ad hoc or whether it's more formal, but just someone to bounce ideas off of and get an objective, third opinion to help you move forward. Because it is, not only is it restrictive time-wise, but it's also restrictive of it's very hard to see yourself as others see you, right? Or to really do that self-reflection on, well, what is my brand and how am I different and how should I be talking about myself when I'm with a potential client? So
Yeah.
it's helpful.
Like my friend Nathan runs a company called Newly, and it's for solos. And in putting them in peer advisor groups, I'm running peer advisor groups for rainmakers that are already successful business developers. And there's a ton of other ones out there that you can look at joining. Worst case scenario, at your firm or you are solo and you've got a few solo friends, get together for coffee once a month and just have conversations about what I know that you don't know, what do you know that I don't know, and exchanging that. Maybe even doing and I do this with a lot of my clients, have what are called buddy accountability groups.
Okay.
So they get together, 3, 4, 5 attorneys. They meet once a week for 45 minutes. They get on a Zoom. They say what they're going to do to advance their interest in marketing, business development. They hit mute. They go do it for 30 minutes. They come back, say what they did. And every single week, they're getting more done than if they were on their own, where it just gets pushed to the bottom, as business development tends to do. So there's a number of different ways to approach it, but taking action is always going to be the answer.
Yeah. No, you're right. You absolutely have to. And like you said, whether it's becoming a student of the game of branding and marketing and building your practice, or, trying to find the support that you need to move forward. So this has been fascinating, Steve, and thank you so much. I mean, we've definitely learned that, law firms absolutely need to have a brand and market themselves. They need to, have a process in order to make sure that they're using their time effectively. And they also kind of need to have an outside, maybe third party opinion of what it is that they do that's unique and different so that they can continue to keep growing. So I appreciate all of that. But to kind of finish up here, to help me honor a small business that is just absolutely killing it with their brand, can you give me the name of an organization that you would just love to give a shout out to?
Well, I've given more publicity to this company than maybe, any other. And I mentioned them earlier because I have gone paper free, and I used to have post-it notes on top of post-it notes, and I had paper everywhere, and you'd ask me a question, I'd have to ruffle through all that paper. And this Remarkable 2 tablet
Yeah.
is, I've probably gotten 30 people to buy them. So I'm not getting a commission, but I do care about my friends and I care about people being efficient. Everything I write into that, because I'm taking notes all day on everything, and they're all going right into folders, easy to find, easy, every client note that I take, every prospective client note that I take, everything that I'm doing goes in there, and I never have to wonder where is it. And it all gets backed up to the cloud. It's backed up on my Dropbox, and I just can't say enough about the Remarkable 2. I did try the iPad, with the pen. It just, first of all, it didn't feel like paper. It was very slippery. This feels like paper. And the second thing I'll say is there's a lot of distractions on an iPad, right? So best laid plans. This does one thing and it does it well. And it's expensive. However, I would say, does a top surgeon care about an expensive scalpel? No, right. Not so much. So right. You pay the money, and I don't know anyone that says, geez, I just wish I hadn't spent all that money on that thing, because it's just a game changer in efficiency and in just being, if you want to go paperless.
Yeah, productivity. I like that. Yeah, I've been meaning to get one of those. I'm afraid my handwriting has become so bad from constantly typing that it wouldn't even be able to, decipher what I'm writing. So yeah.
I don't do that. But what's nice is you write something really sloppily. It has an eraser on the back of the pen. I just erase the last word, do it neater, and continue on. And so I think, the writing to text,
yep,
that's out the door. That I was never going to get value doing that. But having my notes in front of me on every meeting I've ever had for the last 6 years, that's priceless.
That is priceless. Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. So
yeah.
Steve, thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your insights. If there's a lawyer or a law firm managing partner out there who's looking for help to grow, how can they find you?
Very easily found on LinkedIn, Steve Fretzin, Fretzin. I've got fretzin.com, and I write for Above the Law, if you like that website. I've got the podcast, Be That Lawyer, so I've got the new book coming out, so I'm easy to find, trust me. And Fretzin is a very unique name. There's like 20 of us in the world, so I'm the only Fretzin that's doing this for lawyers, so very easy to find.
Your positioning is outstanding. Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging the brand. And if you enjoyed it, I'd love it if you could help me build a strong brand following for the show. So please share this episode and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. And thank you, and stay tuned for our next episode.